He was just a quiet postman. For 25 years, he worked the same neighborhood route, following the same path every morning, didn't talk much to anyone, and no one ever questioned who he really was. Until that little girl went missing in the neighborhood. The police were clueless. Even the FBI couldn't conduct an effective investigation. But that quiet postman, just doing his job, began to notice something. And what happened next would shock the entire neighborhood. Welcome to Hidden Hero Stories. Before we begin this powerful story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. Maplewood was a quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio. White picket fences, perfectly manicured lawns, streets where children could play safely. It was one of those places where the typical American dream came to life. Every morning at 8 a.m., the postal truck would arrive, making deliveries throughout the neighborhood until 5 p.m. Robert Martinez, the 58-year-old postman whom neighborhood residents called Bob, was responsible for this route. Medium height, gray hair, always clean-shaven, walking with calm steps in his navy blue USPS uniform. He'd worked the same neighborhood for 25 years. He knew every house, every family, even the names of every dog and cat. Bob was a quiet man. He did his job and went home. He'd greet neighbors, make small talk about the weather, but never talked about his personal life. Was he married? Did he have children? Where had he come from? No one knew. He never talked about it. The neighborhood residents loved him. He was reliable, punctual, kind. He always helped elderly Mrs. Williams climb the stairs. He greeted the Thompson family's dog, Max, every day, pulling dog biscuits from his pocket. Children called him Uncle Bob and sometimes watched his postal truck with curiosity. But Bob had some peculiar habits. For instance, while making deliveries, he constantly observed his surroundings, not just the houses, but cars, people, even seemed to look inside windows, as if he was recording everything in his mind. He knew who lived in each house, when they left home, what cars they drove. Mrs. Williams had once joked, "Bob, are you an FBI agent? You observe so carefully." Bob had just smiled. "I just like being careful, Mrs. Williams. I want everyone in this neighborhood to be safe." But no one knew how deep those words really were. Bob's day started at 6 a.m. every morning. He'd make coffee, listen to local news, then go to the postal center. But even his way of drinking coffee was unusual. Very slow, very careful, as if analyzing every sip. While listening to the news, he'd note not just headlines, but small news items, police reports, even traffic conditions. At the postal center, other postmen called him Robot Bob, because he came at the same minute every day, followed the same procedures, never ran late. But actually, Bob wasn't mechanical. He was extremely careful. He examined every letter, every package, checked sender addresses, visualized recipients' homes in his mind. Young postman Mike had once asked, "Bob, why do you take this job so seriously? It's just mail delivery." Bob had looked at him. "Mike, I'm not just delivering mail. I'm touching people's lives. One letter can change someone's life. One package can brighten someone's day. This requires responsibility." Mike hadn't understood, but the day when he'd realized Bob was right wasn't far away. During deliveries, Bob's observation skills were almost like a superpower. The Johnson family at 247 Maple Street left every morning at 7:30. Father to work, mother to drop the kids at school. Old Mr. Peterson at 251 worked in his garden every afternoon at 2. The young couple Sarah and Tom at 255 washed their cars on weekends. But Bob noticed not just routines, but changes too. If the Johnsons' car was parked in a different spot, if Peterson's newspaper hadn't been picked up for 2 days, if Sarah and Tom's house lights stayed on at night, he noticed everything. Once he'd noticed newspapers piling up at Mrs. Williams's house. He'd knocked to check and found the elderly woman had fallen and couldn't get up. He'd saved her life by calling an ambulance. "Bob, how did you know?" Mrs. Williams had asked in the hospital. "I bring you the newspaper every day, Mrs. Williams. It hadn't been picked up for 3 days. That's not like you." These kinds of observations made Bob special in the neighborhood. but no one knew this ability had been developed through years of special training. Emma Thompson was one of the most cheerful children living in the neighborhood. 8 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes, always smiling. Her mother, Jennifer, 35, was a strong woman raising Emma alone. Emma's father had died in military service 2 years ago. Bob especially loved Emma. The girl would wave at him every day while waiting for the school bus, shouting, "Hi, Uncle Bob." Bob would always pull a small sticker from his pocket and give it to her. Jennifer Thompson was very grateful to Bob, especially after losing her husband. Having such a reliable figure in the neighborhood comforted her. "Bob, Emma loves you so much," Jennifer had said one day. After her father died, there are few men in the neighborhood she trusts. Bob had smiled. "Emma is a special child, Mrs. Thompson. Protecting her is all of our responsibility." These words would carry much deeper meaning very soon. Emma's routine was very organized. Monday through Friday, she'd board the school bus at 7:45 a.m., get off at 3:30 p.m. Tuesday and Thursday, she had piano lessons. Jennifer would pick her up at 4, bring her back at 5. Saturday mornings, she'd play in the park with her friend Lily. Sundays, she'd go to church with her mother. Bob knew all these routines, not just out of curiosity, but protective instinct. He wanted to guarantee Emma's safety. But sometimes, even the tightest security measures aren't enough. It was Wednesday, October 17th. Bob was making his morning deliveries as usual. At 3:30 p.m., Emma was supposed to get off the school bus. Bob was always at house number 251 at this time, would see Emma, wave at her. But that day the bus came and Emma didn't get off. Bob stopped. Strange. Emma never missed school. Even if she was sick, Jennifer would let him know. He looked at bus driver Mike. He looked confused, too. Bob hurried to the Thompson house. He knocked. Jennifer opened, worry on her face. "Bob, thank goodness you're here. Any news about Emma? The school called at 2:30, said she didn't come out of class after lunch break." Bob's heart stopped. "What do you mean she didn't come out?" "I don't know. I ran to school. We searched everywhere. Emma's gone." Jennifer started crying. Bob calmed her, but his mind was racing. "Did you call the police?" "Yes, 20 minutes ago. They're on their way." Bob looked around. Emma's backpack was missing. Her school clothes were in place. Everything was normal, except for Emma. When police arrived, Detective Lisa Chen and her team immediately began investigating. Last seen at school, 12:30, lunch break. Security cameras had shown her going to the cafeteria, but no record after that. "We searched the schoolyard, checked everywhere around," said Detective Chen. "We issued an Amber Alert." Bob listened quietly, but different questions were forming in his mind. Why would Emma leave the schoolyard? Who would she go with? Was she taken by force or willingly? That night, no one could sleep. Neighborhood residents joined search teams. Bob was among them, but he wasn't just searching, he was observing. On the second day, the FBI got involved. Agent Sarah Rodriguez and her team arrived. The case went federal. But 48 hours had passed. Still no trace of Emma. That night, Bob sat alone at home. His old habits were returning. He was replaying the last 3 months of Emma's life in his mind. He'd observed her every day, who had come to their house, who had talked to Emma, what cars had parked in the neighborhood. There was something. For the past 3 weeks, a blue sedan had been circling the neighborhood. He hadn't noted the license plate he would have in the old days. But he remembered the car's model, the driver's profile. Middle-aged male wearing a hat would be there when Emma's school bus arrived. At first, he'd thought it was a new neighbor, but the car never went to any house, just circled around. Bob picked up the phone, called Detective Chen. "Detective, there's something I need to report." "Bob? Are you calling at this hour?" "I may have noticed someone following Emma." Silence. Then Chen's excited voice. "I'm coming right over." When Chen arrived, Bob told her the details. The car's model, timing, driver's physical characteristics. Chen was taking notes, but looking increasingly puzzled. "Bob, how do you remember these details? This is very specific information." Bob paused. The time for hiding had passed. "Detective, I'm not just a postman. I used to have a different job." "What kind?" Bob took a deep breath. "I worked for the FBI for 18 years. Surveillance and Counterintelligence Division. Observing people, tracking them, analyzing them. That was my job." Chen's mouth fell open. "You were an FBI agent. From 1985 to 2003. After I retired, I wanted to build a quiet life in this neighborhood. Why didn't you say anything? Because that life is behind me, Detective. But for Emma, I can go back. Chen immediately called the FBI. When Agent Rodriguez arrived, she learned Bob's identity and was shocked. Agent Martinez, I'd read your file. You're a legend in surveillance. Bob nodded. I'm retired now, Agent Rodriguez, but I'll do whatever it takes to find Emma. Will you cooperate fully? For Emma, yes. Bob had now returned to his old identity. He set up detailed surveillance in the neighborhood with the FBI. They analyzed every street, every house, every car. The database, based on Bob's 25 years of observations, was more detailed than anyone could imagine. Bob, you've profiled every person living in the neighborhood, said Agent Rodriguez, examining Bob's notes. This was my job, Agent. If you know people's behavior patterns, you notice abnormalities. They researched the blue sedan. The car Bob described turned out to be stolen. The owner had reported his car stolen in Detroit 3 weeks ago. So it's a planned operation, Bob said. He'd been observing Emma for a long time, prepared his plan. They scanned security cameras. At the dates and times Bob remembered, the blue sedan was indeed there. They couldn't see the driver's face clearly, but they identified the license plate. This plate is fake, Rodriguez said, but we can track the route the car took. Bob drew the car's route on a map. After circling the neighborhood, the car always went in the same direction, toward the city's outskirts. What's out there? Chen asked. Bob thought. Old factories, abandoned buildings, perfect hiding place. On the third night, Bob was walking alone on the street. Old habit, when doing surveillance, sometimes being alone is more effective. That's when he noticed. There was a light on in the garage of house number 267, but that house was empty. No one had lived there for 6 months. Bob approached. Sounds were coming from the garage, a child's voice. His heart stopped. Was it Emma? He quickly pulled out his phone, called the FBI. Agent Rodriguez, 267 Maple Street. Come now. Then he carefully approached the garage. He looked inside through the window. Emma was there, tied to a chair but alive. Next to her was a middle-aged man, the driver Bob had been observing for weeks. Bob's FBI training kicked in. He analyzed the situation. 1 exit, 1 suspect, 1 hostage. Rescue was possible, but needed to be careful. The man was giving Emma water, a good sign. No intention to harm. Probably kidnapping for ransom. It would be best to wait for the FBI. But Emma was crying. Bob couldn't stand it. Bob quietly went to the back of the garage. His 18 years of FBI experience had taught him how to move silently. The garage's back window was open. Perfect entry point. He slipped inside. The man was behind Emma, didn't see Bob. Bob approached him. When the man noticed something, Bob was already behind him. FBI, don't move! The man was startled, tried to reach for his gun, but Bob was faster. He took him down, took his weapon. Emma, are you okay? The little girl was crying but alive. Uncle Bob, I was waiting for you. Bob's eyes filled with tears. Emma knew he would come. When the FBI arrived, the incident was over. The man was caught. Emma was safe. Agent Rodriguez looked at Bob. You violated procedure, Bob. You should have waited. Bob hugged Emma. Emma didn't wait 18 years, Agent. I couldn't wait either. When Jennifer rushed to the hospital and saw Emma safe, she collapsed. She hugged Bob. Bob, you saved her. I don't know how to thank you. No thanks needed, Jennifer. Emma is our girl. It's all of our responsibility to protect her. Then Jennifer looked at him in amazement. You were an FBI agent. Why didn't you ever say? Bob smiled. Because I'm just a postman now. This is my choice. But the neighborhood was different now. Everyone knew who Bob was. Mrs. Williams came. So I was right. You really were an FBI agent. Not anymore, Mrs. Williams. Now I'm just your neighbor. Detective Chen explained the results to Bob. The kidnapper, David Miller, 45, had been imprisoned 3 times, specialist in child kidnapping and ransom. Why did he choose Emma? Jennifer asked. Bob answered, because he knew her routines. Emma, being from a single-parent family, her mother working, created a security gap. He just didn't calculate me. Calculate you how? Because I had also learned his routine. Working in this neighborhood for 25 years allowed me to notice every abnormality. Miller confessed. He received a 20-year prison sentence. A few weeks later, Bob was trying to return to his normal routine. But now, everything was different. The neighborhood's view of him had changed. Emma would run to him every day, saying, "You're my hero." Jennifer would thank him at every opportunity. Other families would entrust their children to him. FBI agent Rodriguez brought an offer. Part-time consultant position, missing children cases, Bob thought. Only this type of case, and my identity must remain secret. Deal. A month later, Bob was working in the same neighborhood, maintaining the same routines. But now he kept his notebook open. There were consultant cases from the FBI. Emma had asked him, "Uncle Bob, did you always know you were an FBI agent?" Bob had smiled. "Emma, I always knew who I was. Others just didn't need to know." "Why?" "Because sometimes people knowing you makes your job harder. I wanted to protect you, not receive praise." Mrs. Williams approached. "Bob, you no longer have privacy. Are you sad?" Bob answered while hugging Emma. "No, Mrs. Williams, because now I understand that you can hide who you are, but you should never forget who you are. I'm Robert Martinez, both a postman and a former FBI agent. Together, they make me who I am." Bob still works in the same Maplewood neighborhood. He still wears the same blue uniform, follows the same route. But now everyone knows that sometimes the greatest protectors work in the most ordinary-looking places. And maybe today, you passed by a protector without noticing. Tell us in the comments, have you ever encountered such a hidden protector? Someone you thought was ordinary but then learned their true identity? Don't forget to subscribe to Hidden Heroes. We share powerful stories like this every week. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, take another look at the ordinary-looking people around you. Maybe they're protecting you in ways you never knew.